Why are people buying the Sig P365? Well, it's because it is the most modular subcompact handgun on the market. Jumping right in, obviously we're running a Sig P365 slide and a Sig FCU. Almost everything else has been changed about this handgun. I originally bought this as an X series gun that came with this frame, put a tac dev rail on it, ended up upgrading to the X macro frame when the X macro was released. You'll find here that I'm constantly changing the 365, and it's just because you can. New parts come out, things change, and this easily becomes the Barbie doll for men. I'm constantly changing this build, and you'll kind of see with the 4 different builds, you'll see how modular this handgun actually is. Starting from top to bottom, we have the Holosun 407K. This is a great optic. I put this on a lot of my subcompact handguns. It hasn't failed me yet, so we're gonna keep running it. What I like about this is the buttons are on the side. They're really nice and easy to push. It has a removable battery tray, so you don't have to remove the optic. And it's almost the same size as the 365 slide, so you don't have a bunch of optic hanging off the side. As I said earlier, the slide is OEM. I didn't change anything except for the threaded barrel. With the threaded barrel, we went true precision, as we typically do. We love the barrels a lot and we use them. We also sell them on the site because we actually trust them and we have a lot of rounds through them. Up next is the Herrington Arms HT365 compensator. This is kind of the best do-all compensator. It's going to both reduce muzzle rise and felt recoil in your hand. It's kind of perfect comp for carry. It's a little bit shorter than our dual port. And it kind of reduces 2 factors of recoil. You can see it is actually nested in the X macro frame. I think that's another reason people are really getting into this 365 is you can do these integrated builds. I think Staccato kind of started a trend with the integrated look with their Staccato XC. So we're just kind of replicating that with the 365. Roland specials have been around for a long time. However, this is a whole new look that a lot of people are striving for. And the 365 allows you to get there. You can do it in different ways. Essentially, when you have a 365 slide, you put the X macro frame on there and it's integrated. Or if you have a regular 365 frame and you don't want to buy an X macro frame, this is a tac dev rail. It has a thumb rest on there as well that will give you the same integration. Moving our way down, we actually have the OEM trigger in here. I like this trigger a lot. It has a really nice break, really nice reset. It's a little squishy, but there's not a lot of take up. And I really don't have too many complaints about it. I've never had issues. Early on, they actually had striker drag on the primer of the bullets. That has since been fixed with the 365. And I have a couple of them and I never had that issue. Moving our way down, we have the TLR7 sub. We've done a lot of videos talking about this, but I always run the TLR7 sub. It's a great weapon light. We're going to be looking into the Sig Romeo weapon lights. Apparently they're getting pretty good, so we're gonna check those out. Probably do a video comparing those two in the future. And as I said earlier, X macro frame, that's the last attachment we have on here. For 80 bucks, you can't beat it. You get a larger frame so you can fit 17 round mags with the X macro mag. I like a handgun where I can grab the entire frame. My pinky's not falling off the bottom like it would with this 365. You can see my pinky's kind of hanging over. I just do not like subcompact handguns that are that small. I would prefer to have a little more grip and have to fight concealability a little bit. I personally have carried a lot of full-size guns, so with how thin the 365 is, it's just helping me out. I think it's the exact gun I want to carry. It's thin, it's got a full-size grip, it's not overly long with a compensator on there. The only complaint I could come up with is price. Starting out, this is gonna be a more expensive handgun than the other subcompact options. But if you want to pay a little bit more and actually get a gun that will grow with you as a shooter, be adaptable with all these accessories, I think you really can't go wrong with this. It's a very reliable setup. We've put a lot of rounds through a 365, both in testing our compensators and shooting videos for you guys. If I had to, I could take this and do competition. It wouldn't be that big of a deal. With the compensator, it's a lot less snappy than you would think. But again, you can even add further upgrades to this gun and make it more modular. With an aluminum frame, you can get away with adding more weight or a thumb rest, which will further reduce felt recoil and make it that much easier in a competition setup. If you're the kind of guy like I am, where I just kind of want to have one gun that does everything, then the 365 is kind of a great option for you. One thing to keep in mind when you're going to buy a 365 is you're going to have 4 different options. You're going to have the 365, which is going to have a little bit smaller frame, and it's going to have a smaller length, so it'll be flush with the 365 slide. You have the 365X, which will be the same length. However, it'll be a little bit longer in the frame portion, so it'll fit a 12 round mag flush. And then you have the 365XL, which will have the same frame as the X. It'll fit flush with the 365, and it will also be the same as the front, so it's the exact same frame. You're not gonna have a longer front like you would think you would. If you're buying a 365XL expecting to have an integrated comp, you're not gonna get it. you're either going to need to buy a 365 and then buy an X macro frame, or buy an extended XL frame. So for example, this Icarus is an extended frame for the XL to be flush. I don't know why Sig made the XL stick out the front of the frame, but don't buy an XL frame expecting to have any sort of integration on a 365X or 365 slide. And last but not least, we have the 365X macro. This is a very common option right now. About a year ago, maybe a little bit more, it has porting on it. I wouldn't call it a compensator because there is a large bore out the front of the slide, and most of the gases are following the bullet and going out the front of the slide. It is somewhat effective as a ported barrel, but we actually did a video on this, link down below. The compensated version is gonna be a lot more effective at reducing felt recoil because it has a chamber. It's gonna put a lot more pressure on the end of the gun, and it's just gonna be more effective at reducing felt recoil. It's also gonna be a little bit cheaper if you do the build. One thing to keep in mind with the 365 is ergonomics. There's so many different frame options. You can kind of get lost in the weeds. The standard 365X is the smallest frame I have from Sig. It actually feels pretty good. The grip texture is pretty nice. My pinky wants to fall off the bottom, which is a little annoying, but you're not gonna get smaller than this and still fit your entire hand on there. So the X is probably the smallest I would go. Still feels pretty good, it's pretty comfortable. It's got good grip texture, so it's going to feel good when shooting in the wet, rain, cold, whatever. It's incredibly light, and it's flush with a 12-round mag. You can do it in mag extended for 15. So still a pretty good option if you want to stay stock and not upgrade your frame right off the bat. You want to put that money towards an optic or a weapon light. I would kind of recommend doing that to get started. But if you want to step it up, I think the X macro is a pretty easy jump for $80, $89, whatever it is. It's not going to break the bank, and it's going to give you more capacity. It's going to give you a larger frame. It's going to allow you to do integration with a compensator. And all in all, I just think it's a better frame. The mag release is more positive. The texture is similar, but there's more of it. There's more surface area, which is going to allow you to have a better grip. So it's going to be better on recoil. You can also put a weapon light on there more easily. You can do that with this rail system, or there are certain lights that attach to the bottom of it, but they're not as good of lights as the TLR7 sub. This will allow you to do that as well. So for $89, I think that's a great frame upgrade. And honestly, this frame is still one of my favorite, even with all the aluminum frames that we do have. If you're looking at aluminum frame, there's 3 options that are really good. You're gonna have the Icarus, different lengths, both in the frame portion and the rail portion. This is the 365X length. It's a pretty big upgrade because the weight is going to reduce a lot of recoil, and you're going to have a little more aggressive stippling. And they also threw in the rail section, so for a 365X length, now you get to carry a TLR7 sub, which is a great little option. Mischief Machine has a much more expensive option, but it's going to change it to a 1911 grip angle and include these panels, which is going to make ergonomics a little bit better for you if you're used to a 1911 style handgun, or you want the adjustability of changing out these panels. And last but not least, we have the Shallowtech Flex Frame. This is the one that rules them all. It's affordably priced. It's definitely the most comfortable. We actually did a video on just this frame. It's very adaptable as well. You can change it into 3 different segments, making either the rail longer or the frame longer. You can also add a thumb rest and a mag well. So past the 365 being adaptable, you can also change the frame itself, which is really cool from Shallowtech. It's really nice to see that a handgun can be so adaptable. A lot of handguns you can't change the frame out because the serial number is embedded into it, whereas with the FCU system from Sig, you can change basically everything. If you wanted to build a gun from scratch and buy a slide, buy a frame, buy an FCU, you can do that. It's gonna save you a little bit of money in the long term, especially if you're gonna be going with a Frankenstein build. You're gonna save some money and you're gonna make it yours. You can get crazy slides from like Norso or Lone Wolf and really personalize a handgun to yourself. You're not stuck with the same boring black gun with some slide serrations. You can really go above and beyond. So who is the Sig P365 for? I think it's for anybody who wants to get into customization or is thinking about it down the road. If you want to buy a standard 365 and rock that for a while, get good at shooting, do it. It's a great handgun from the start. Like I said, it's gonna be a little more expensive than some of the other options, but that capability down the road with customization is unmatched. The Sig P320 can do it, but it's a bigger handgun. And honestly, this is kind of becoming my favorite handgun. It's replacing the Sig P320 because it's just smaller in every dimension, and I can get almost the same amount of recoil out of this as I can my 320. My 320 still has a little flatter shooting. However, I'm willing to make the sacrifice for how small this is. So it kind of covers everybody. You know, the Glock 43X is a great gun that we've talked about in the past. For the price point, I think this is gonna come in a little bit higher, but it has a lot more capability. And if you never see yourself wanting to customize out a gun, maybe the 43X would be the ticket for you. But I'm still always gonna recommend the 365 just because if you change your mind with the 43, you're kind of stuck. If you change your mind with the 365, the sky's the limit on what you can do with these kind of builds. If you guys end up building a 365 and you have some Herrington Arms products on there, tag us on Instagram. We'd love to see your guys' builds. And with that being said, if you guys learned something, we'd appreciate a like and subscribe. We'll see you next time.